we roll with it, right? Actually, we've had such an unbelievable month of Mercury retrograde shenanigans, you would hardly believe it. So this is just a minor little, technicality. We're all good.
Good.
So how are you today?
I'm doing good. There's so much going on. It's such a huge growth time with everything. So I'm feeling more of my sensitive self. That's just real. It's a huge growth phase, and it really all good stuff.
It's great. I think those of us who are around you and connected to you know little bits. You have a book coming out, and you have big expansiveness going on in your business, and so I just am grateful that you were willing to come hang with us today and talk, even feeling in a vulnerable state.
Thank you. Well, it got me to put on a little lipstick and to actually shower, and put on some earrings, and here we go.
Well, happy to have you here.
Thank you.
So I just want to invite you maybe to do your introduction and tell us a little bit about how you came into this work that you're doing, a little bit of the story that brought you into this space. And I'm curious, has it always been this way? Did you always have the art piece in the art of money, or did it start out just one or the other?
Great. Okay. So I began as a dancer, and as an African-based dancer. I started out as a jazz dancer and then moved more into Afro-Brazilian. And early on, knew I either was going to be a solid gold dancer. I don't know, maybe I'm giving my age. I'm in my mid-40s. Or I was going to be a businesswoman. And then at some point, I asked to go to therapy when I was 16. And so that therapist got added into the mix. And in my early 20s, I moved to Israel for a year to understand myself more. And when I was there, I thought I made up dance movement therapy, somatic psychology. I thought I made it up. So I realized pretty soon I didn't make anything up, that there was graduate programs in somatic psychology and body-centered therapy. And I came back to the States and came to Boulder, Colorado to go to Naropa University. And, put myself I was the youngest one in my cohort. I was 24 years old. I was a baby on some level. And they basically ask you to be your own case study.
Okay.
And I think that's a great way to become a therapist. I think you need to do your own work. And so I did. And it took me 5 years to go through that entire program because of the level of coursework, because of the internships, because of the 150-page thesis. And all the work that I was doing at that time was about grief. I worked in hospice. I did overnight bereavement care. I was doing all this internal work. My whole thesis was about women and rite of passage and using authentic movement to actually help us into womanhood. So obviously I'm not saying anything about money, right?
I'm loving. Helps explain the context and the texture around your work so much.
I'm not saying anything about money. So for me, there's a few epiphanies, and one came when my student loan was due. And I was working in the mental health field as a counselor, doing hospice work, bereavement work, leading authentic movement groups. And then the school loan came due. And that was just a moment where I got to, I had a huge freak out, and just considered, well, maybe I'll just leave the country and travel for the rest of my life and not deal with this. Or, it just gave me the opportunity to look back at my whole life and say, do I have a relationship to money? What is my relationship to money? What did I learn from my parents? What did I learn from school, my education system, my incredible graduate school program? And it was just so blaringly obvious that money was the huge missing piece. And my entire education, even at Naropa, where we studied every single topic under the sun and beyond the sun, it really everything about body and sexuality and spirituality and gender and intimacy and, on and on and on, spirituality. And we never touched money. So how, it was like, how was I going to work with my couples? Right. How was I going to start my own private practice? How was I, so there was a lot in that about value for me, because I was starting to really get clear about my skill set, my superpowers, my gifts. Like, I did really deep work with people. And on the other hand, I had no idea like how to have a relationship to money. I used to throw in my bank statements, and I had no idea how to create a livelihood for myself that integrated what I love, what I did great, and really serve. I just did not know how to put that all together. So hence, you know, years later, that was the beginning of, you know, I remember when I couldn't bring chocolate to potluck. So I'm 46. I was 27, 26, 28. And it was just heartbreaking to me. I couldn't show up with an abundance of chocolate. And I couldn't do the self-care that I needed to do to be able to grow a private practice. And it was all so clear to me. And so those were some of the beginnings. That was some of the seeds of how do I have a relationship to money? What does that look like? And then I started looking around at my community, realizing no matter what background they came from, everyone seemed to have some level of money shame. Again, no matter what background people came from. Everyone had money stories, everyone had strengths, everyone had challenges. And most of my community had made money bad, or, you know, it was more of a spiritual, creative community, and we're not supposed to strive for money. We're not supposed to, you know, as a therapist, we're just supposed to do our good work and somehow, I don't know, you know, live on a commune. And so all of that together just helped me begin to start breaking through my own money ceilings, start doing my own inner money work, asking myself, what is my money story? And starting to create an entire methodology that I needed to go through, and that then I brought to my community and started teaching in small groups of 10 people over and over and over, and this was 15 years ago. And so that's just a little beginning of how it was created. Yeah.
Thank you. So since that first inception, you have now grown that into this community and program, The Art of Money. Tell us a little bit about what that is. It sounds like it's coming into right relationship with your own relationship to money.
It is. I mean, on the surface, it's helping folks come into a conscious relationship to money, a healthy relationship to money. It's a year-long journey that I used to teach over 6 weeks, or weekend workshops. I can't even imagine, right? I used to call it conscious bookkeeping, and it really just kept evolving. So the way that I teach, I love coming up with content, and that's one of my specialties, but I also really love working live with people. So I see what's needed in the community, and then I just keep creating more content and more exercises. And so it was literally teaching it in every format for years and growing the methodology, but from day one. So I had a mentor 15 years ago named Tamara Slayton, and I was told to meet her, but what's wild is that I had held one of her paper newsletters right before they were online, and it was called Cycles, and it was all about menstrual awareness and health. And I had held on to this paper newsletter for years, and then when I moved to California as the next step for myself 15 years ago, I was told to meet her. And when her name was mentioned, I, you know, knew right away, oh my God, this is this woman who I've, and so when I met her, she had, all 5 of her kids went through Waldorf. My son goes to Montessori, but so she was steeped in Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy. She had studied every topic under the sun, and she was at the last few years of her life because she was dying of cancer by the time I met her. So I got to have 2 years with her. And the last phase of her life, the topic was economics. And she surprised the hell out of herself. Like, what? You know, like, I'm going from angels and rite of passage and menstrual health work to economics. And so we met up the last 2 years of her life, and I was doing her bookkeeping. There was a transition. Like, I went from being a therapist and learning bookkeeping and every single thing I could about money management. And we met, and pretty soon she said, oh, you're trying to integrate all your previous training as a therapist and all the deep healing work that you're doing with all these practical systems and tools and practices. And that's what I was doing. You know, I was like, how do I do this? So I met her, and she said, it's time to give a talk. And so she basically demanded that I give a talk, and she would gather the people, gather the community. And so I went out into the woods and said, what am I supposed to bring back? This is 15 years ago. what's the methodology? What are the concepts? And I came back and me and my husband put it on big white paper. And it's the same 3 phases since then. I name them differently now, but at the beginning it was financial therapy, values-based bookkeeping, and life visioning. And now I call it money healing, money practices, and money maps. So it's the same journey, but it's a year-long journey now because we were not taught this in small increments on up. Right? And so it's not this quick fix. It's giving folks a whole guide map and tools and practices, really deep work in the money healing realm about money story, family of origin, what needs forgiveness, creating money healing rituals, a little snapshot of each. The money practices is more about like, what do you do daily and weekly and monthly and yearly, and how do you fill it with sacredness and meaning and playfulness and creativity? And we can talk about that more. And then the 3rd phase is money maps. That's all about, so what's the vision and what phase of life are you in and what are your values and what are those numbers? I'm both really practical. I love practical tools, and I'm deeply, deeply connected to how to make this as sacred and meaningful and beautiful and creative as possible. So it's that I'm always integrating all 3 of those phases. So that's a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, and I'm curious, in our world, in the mystic world, what I see is we tend to have 2 different camps. We have money managers who are very careful about their numbers and their practices. There isn't necessarily a whole lot of that sacred magic and joy in there, but they're very on top of their numbers. And they're kind of wanting to like experience that ease, grace, magic, and flow around it. And then we have this other camp. There's a pretty big divide between the 2. And there's this other camp that's like, I just don't want to look at those numbers at all. And I'm just going to be over here trusting that it's all going to work out. And the side of the spectrum that can start to feel more like magical thinking. And really what you're saying is that there can be this marriage of those 2 in a beautiful way, and that these 3 kind of buckets that you guide us through are a way to integrate those 2. Do you notice that divide in your work as well, kind of those 2 camps?
I would say that's one of the camps. There's more nuances to it.
Sure.
But certainly that's one. Like I do find like boxes. I love the Enneagram. So, I do love to pull things out. I would say I get so many financial folks.
Yeah.
I do. And then I get so many folks from the creative community and the spiritual community as well. And I feel like we each need different ingredients. So that's like quite a generalization to say the money folks know how to do it, but that they need more of the deeper spiritual, but also they need to become intimate with their money story. Yeah. Because in their training, there's no training on what is your emotional money story. So to help them have emotional intelligence around their money story and to be able to bring that to, all the accountants and financial planners and financial coaches that I refer to and collaborate with, they all do their own deep work. They know they need that, and they know they didn't get that in their traditional training, right? Yeah. And then, so then some of my folks who are more creative, they're terrified of the numbers, or they are bored to tears, or they, think it's just going to be awful. And so, yes, I mean, I bring them all together, but that's one camp, I'd say. There's a lot more. Yeah.
I think people are often surprised at how much their money journey, healing their money, relationship to money, is around emotional literacy. And I know that the first book that kind of brought that together for me was Sacred Commerce, where it was the first time I had ever really heard about the merchant priest and how the marketplace used to work. And just for those who haven't read that book yet, the story that Iman shares in that book is imagining back to the days when the marketplace was really watched over by the merchant priest, and there was a sacred process and blessing that went around that, so that there was even exchange, that every melon grown had a home to go to, and every home that needed a whatever was able to find it in the marketplace, and there was enough resources in that exchange that everybody left in full exchange with what they had to offer and also what their needs were. And just the thought of that role being played, and that it was a lineage passed down, but then also potentially suppressed for a long time. And then how the book weaves from the merchant priest into emotional literacy was really the first time I saw those side by side. And I remember even at the time reading it, I felt like, whoa, how did we get from sacred commerce, the ancient merchant model, to talking about emotional alchemy and emotional literacy. But the more you're on this journey and bridging between possibly these two extremes, the more you realize this really is an emotional journey. This is about either facing our stories, our fears, and our patterns, or our trust and allowing and our flow. How do you kind of bring those in together for people?
Oh my, there's so much to respond to what you just said. Number one, my specialty is more on the micro level of relationship to money. So that's why I love working with the woman or the couple or the family or the creative entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And then in my spare time, I in small increments, I bring in the macro relationship to money.
Nice.
So I'll read Sacred Commerce, or I'll read Jacob Needleman, or I'll read Bernard Lietaer, who's an economist who talks about Mother Earth and yin and yang currency. And for me, that's a really important part of my teaching, just to my own understanding, to really understand where we are on the planet right now, what's going on in our culture. But again, that's really not my forte. My forte is that it just became so clear to me that we have projected so much onto money.
Yeah.
Right? And we've made it is emotional to us because I always say it's about money and it's never about money. Right? So it's about money in the sense that most of us did not learn this from small increments on up, as I was saying earlier. All the practical things, like I didn't learn how to track my income and expenses. I didn't learn how to set up bookkeeping systems. I didn't learn how to read reports and review numbers, and all of that I fell in love with because I wasn't good at math as a kid, and I just thought I wasn't smart in that way. And then someone held my hand and showed me how to learn QuickBooks, and I was like, oh my God, this is a revelation, and this is incredible. And it taught me so much about business and about numbers and about myself and on, right? So for me, there was that component where it is about money. There's skill sets that we have simply not been taught, right? So to be initiated into this area of life, we need to learn some of the practical skill sets. Then there's all this other deeper stuff of what it's really about. So when I ask people, like, what have you projected onto money? It's vast, and it's this ball of threads that feels very shameful at first. It feels very shadowy or taboo. And it is for most people, again, no matter how much money we're making, no matter what backgrounds we came from. And so for me, we just finished a chapter. I have a co-writer on It's About Money, and it's never about money. Right. And all the deeper stuff is what you're saying. It's about safety. It's about trust. It's about our value. It's about what responsibility, becoming an adult, becoming, having a mature relationship to money means to us. It's all the deeper stuff. So yes, in my year-long program, I bring all of the somatic tools that came from my training. So tool number one, or practice number one, is a body check-in. So I invite people to just start walking around in their lives, which we're already doing. So this is the thing. Anyone who's on here, we all have a spiritual practice in some way, or a psycho-spiritual practice. And so I'm always saying, like, bring those tools and bring those incredible practices that you bring to yoga, or that you bring to your sitting meditation, or that you bring, I hike every day in the woods. That's part of my movement meditation. All of those practices bring to your relationship to money. We think they're separate, right, and they just simply are not, So I'm just even like beginning to talk about this, but I was saying body check-in. So the body check-in is just stopping and pausing and checking in, letting yourself notice physically what's going on, what sensations are present, what emotions are present. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there's many. Noticing where our breath is, how deep, shallow. That's a beginning place. And I say, bring body check-ins before you're going to have a money conversation with your honey. Yeah. Before you're going to the grocery store, before you're going to tell your client your fees. And then not just do it before, but do it during and doing it after. And sometimes we go to the mall and we just check out, and we come back, or we're in the car and we're like, I just totally checked out of my body and what was going on. And you can learn about your patterns. So the body check-in is, for me, one of the simplest and yet such a profound tool to bring to everyday life, to help you understand the emotional part, your psychology, to begin to understand and pull apart your money story. Mm-hmm. So then you can start to see, like, again, your strengths, your challenges. No one has one or the other. And so just to start getting in there and pulling it apart. Yeah.
See what's going on. I feel like you've touched on two things that are directions I really want to go. One is that it's all a perception, because it doesn't matter how much you're making or what you're doing. Our money pattern tends to present itself throughout cycles, whether we're making this much or making this much. If we haven't done the work, we're still manifesting the same pattern. The other is, I think a lot of people in this group, especially in the Mystics, have done that work of kind of spreading out the pieces and teasing out those threads, as you call them. They understand their patterns. They see the recurring pattern. They're at the point where they feel like they've looked at it, but what do I do to shift it, is what I'm hearing a lot.
So for me, everyone's different. For some people, the awareness of the body check-ins and understanding your money story and pulling it apart from all different angles, and then doing some of the deeper work in that. So it goes from awareness, I'm being really simple here, right? So, which I know your folks will get, awareness to understanding to what needs to be forgiven from the past. Some of us are still holding on to a contract that we never read when we were getting into a first marriage. Yeah. And now the marriage is ending and we never read that contract. Right. And so now we're feeling the repercussions of that. Or, we didn't pay taxes for a few years, or I can go on and on of all these examples. Sure. It's usually some kind of mess, small or big. Not everyone, but a lot of my folks have some mess that they need to take some time to clean up and need to forgive themselves. So there is a lot of ritual work that's done before I move into the practical. And ritual for me is, I call it a money healing ritual. It's you guys know, you ladies know ritual, right? So setting up a ritual space of honoring who you were at that time when you created that mess, or who you've been, or the family of origin that you learned all this from, and that you're doing exactly what they did, or you're still pissed, or you still have that contract, or you're still rebelling against them. At some point, we get to see clearly what we've chosen, or the contracts we've signed, or the beliefs we had and where they come from. And then at some point, we get to say, we need to go on a new road. We need to go on a new path, right? And again, I'm being simple, but so even imagining creating a whole money healing ritual just about who you were, your identity, your financial identity from the past, and really honoring that. Yeah. And it needs to be honored. Sometimes it's a younger part of ourselves that needs to be scooped up, and she needs to have a say. Of I'm pissed, I didn't get my needs met, or my parents' credit card got declined at this moment, or I remember my mom paying the bills and sitting down and was very agitated and tense, or screaming behind the scenes. I'm saying hard stuff because it's all real. Some families don't talk about money. Right. So imagining creating a whole money healing ritual. You guys know how to do it, where the focus is money, of who you were, the patterns, the identity of who you were, and really honoring what you're stepping into, right? Mm-hmm. So there's forgiveness work, there's money healing, ritual work, and then there's so much more, because that's where the practical gets to start integrating with the emotional psychological work, and with some of the deeper value, the internal value work and the external value work, which I can talk more about. But so that's where we can start shifting it, and I can talk more about that.
Do you recommend those two in parallel, or do you recommend the emotional forgiveness work first and then working on the systems, or do they go side by side?
It's so individual, right? So a lot of people come to me and there's just so much urgency, right, and eagerness, because again, they're coming to me in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. That's my age group. I get some 20s and I get some 7-year-olds. 30 to 6-year-olds, that's when we're like, it's time now. It is in our culture. We've done a lot of work on many things, and it's not always the last frontier money, but it's typically one of the last frontiers. And so we're finally ready. And so a lot of folks are eager, feel urgent, feel like, shit, I wish I had found this work 10 years ago, And so I'm always honoring pacing and timing, and just saying, please, like there's no behind. Please trust your timing. Please trust that you're ready to do this now. And so everyone, even in the year-long journey, of course, I had to map it out and design a curriculum, and curate it. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a step-by-step journey. Some people do it in that order. They do money healing for 4 months, then they do money practices for 4 months, and then money maps. Other folks need to interweave it together. They go so far down in the emotional that they're like, get me a bookkeeping system, like let me take some practical steps here, or let me learn the language of money, or everyone kind of has edges or easier places. Some people love the deep healing work, some people can't. It's hard and painful and uncomfortable. Some people spend the year doing the money healing work, and then next year they come back and they're ready for the practical. So there's, that's a side teaching of please honor your pacing and timing and trust it. And you ultimately get to craft this,
Yeah. I'm thinking so much about my time coaching people in chronic illness and how it felt like such a leap of faith that ritual and deep healing work could actually deliver them to an outcome, and that there was still this kind of Western perception that I need the pill that's going to fix it for the diagnosis and then I'll be over it. And then that we learned that, shamanic healing path is actually exactly what you're describing. It's do the inner work, do the forgiveness work. And even in that model around health and the body, there's this resistance that the emotional work can affect real change. It seems like even more of a stretch for people that ceremony, ritual, cycles, forgiveness work can heal actual tangible money issues in a person's life. So can you share some story or nugget of offering from your experience to help people bridge that gap into trust that what they know to be true now, and I believe this community knows it to be true for their physical body and probably even their emotional and aligning to their path and purpose. But there's still a little bit of this sense of, can I apply healing work and magical thinking to my money? Or is back to that, is that really responsible? Can you share some stories of the kinds of transformations you've seen?
Yeah, that's always hard for me to just recall stories because this year there are 400 students. Last year there was 350. There's so many people I'm working with on all different levels all the time, and so this is how I will answer it. Is that again for me it's not one without the other. So someone may be doing money healing work for a lot longer because that's what they need, but for me all three need to be integrated with each other. They really, really, really do. Again, everyone needs to decide what's the equation, how much of each thing. In my world, they cannot be separate. So for me personally, I could simply not just do the emotional psychological work without the practical work or without the visioning work. They just all need to be interconnected. And so the deeper inner work, just really brings the awareness and understanding, right? And the forgiveness and the honoring and the healing, right? That most of us need, right? And then side by side, we're living in a duality. We're living in a universe that there's still a physical reality. When I was younger, there were times where I didn't want to believe that, or I wanted to ignore that, or not have anything to do with systems or practices or daily ritual. And it's been such a gift to add that in. So I think there is a trust in general with my entire community. They think they're coming into work to get some more clarity around their numbers, or to have more intimacy, or to learn more knowledge around the language of money and systems, or to have more peace of mind around money, or to have more success, however they define it, or to understand their value more. They're all coming in.
Those desired outcomes. Yeah.
Those are my boxes. I've seen that for years. People are I need more hope. I need more peace of mind. I need more. And I talk about all of that. And we go for that. And then there is this trust in the process and in the journey. And so even just talking about money practices for a little bit. So even the way that I do that, I'm sitting here with my rocks, I'm sure so here's my carnelian, and so you can see, I don't know if you can see, okay, there's candles lit, there's chocolate. I nibble on a lot of organic dark chocolate. When I go to sit down to do my bookkeeping and look at my numbers and review everything, there's always this.
Yeah.
There's always this, you know. And then again, for me, even learning the language of money and learning how to track and have clarity on what's coming in, what's going out, what my balances are, learning how to read reports, learning how to review and add compassion and learn what's working, what's not, what's in alignment with my values, renaming categories. So another little tool that I started from the beginning was rename it. Like, you know, it seems, again, so simple and yet so profound. And for some people, it's like, what's the big deal with renaming? But we know for some of us, naming has a lot of energy. And so naming something instead of mortgage or rent to home or sanctuary or love shack or you know, instead of like a debt that you have to my Italian experience or my big life transition, or, you know, it's just like, it's really honoring. It's naming it in a way that really honors.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think a really recurring pattern that I hear in this group, because there are so many entrepreneurs in this group, is having invested a lot in their business. And when it's happening, there's this feeling of, I'm doing the right thing, I'm investing. And then when it accumulates or revenue doesn't start to come in at the rate they would have expected to match it, all of a sudden there's this shame or this guilt. And I love the idea of renaming that to growing my business or investing in, you know, my divine path or something that shifts it away from that heaviness.
Yeah, I'm not, with debt, I'm not black and white. It can be very addictive.
Yeah.
And there can be really negative patterns around that. And then there can be really clear intention around it as well. And with our businesses, we need to invest at certain phases. Like I bootstrapped for years and did a lot of trade, which was wonderful. And then at some point, you know, 15 years down the road, I've had a few different business models, and there have been a few points where I went into an investment phase. It's scary. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's filled with really clear intention, and then you got to monitor it. You got to watch it and just see. And this is the thing. When I first started investing at the beginning, I gave myself more time to be able to pay that back.
Yeah.
Because I was still young and didn't really know the animal of my business model. You know, as I matured into my business, then there was years later, I was like, okay, I want the return on investment within a month.
Sure.
But at the beginning, I gave myself a lot more space.
Sure.
And time, you know, and a lot, and just one more like concept is that my mentor, Tamara, years ago would say, you know, some liabilities are hidden assets. Some liabilities are hidden assets. And for me, that was just like one of her zingers of just giving a much more wider view and spiritual view on, it's not all debt, liability is bad. It's like sometimes it alchemizes into this incredible value and asset that would not have happened unless we made the investment or unless we were in a huge transition phase and on, and then came out the other end, you know, so.
Beautiful. Well, and another illumination of why the awareness is so important. So to know, is your debt coming from a place of intentionality? And if so, what's the intention? Or is it a pattern or something that maybe you want to look at that addictive side or the release of that pattern?
Yeah.
Wow. So how would you feel about us opening up to questions?
I would love it.
I would love it. Yeah. Let's go ahead and if you have a question for Bari, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. We're a small enough group. Just go ahead and do it. You know, Elena's got to have a question. Dawn, you have a question? So good to see you.
Hi there. I can't see you though.
Hey, Bari. Hey, this is Elena. Can you hear me?
I can. There you are. Hi. Hi there.
My guy, I actually do have a question. Thank you for calling on me. I actually am wondering if you have, because you're right, we all do rituals, you know, big time, and a lot of it resonates really deeply with the self-care work that I do with women. And I'm just wondering if you have any specific rituals around money that like are on a regular basis to engage with it and really give it that place in your day, in your week, in your month, you know, that work.
Definitely.
I'll turn off my camera now, but I'm listening.
Okay. Love it. So of course, you know, when we get to what you're calling ritual, I call money practices, but it's or money dates. And at the end of the day, we all need to craft this according to what works, right? And experiment. So, but the way that I've done it is we're just writing this chapter right now on money dates. So my life is all in like book creation framework. So we're on money dates right now. And basically the chapter is giving like a whole arc of where I was 16 years ago, where me and my husband were, and where we are today. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it started from literally just manually tracking in QuickBooks every few days because it felt good. Again, I went until age 28 without doing any of that or with completely ignoring it. So for me, the rhythm was every few days. And then so let me talk about money dates. And so for me, money dates is simply like giving yourself some time and space to sit down at a nice area. It would be nice if it's like a space or desk that you clear out and you make beautiful. You add some flowers, your candles, right? Your whole thing. I know you all already have that. So you have a special space. And a money date happens on an emotional level, a practical level, psychological level, spiritual level. And so, you know, sitting down at a money date, it could happen every day for 5 minutes at the beginning, just to get those grooves going. For me, I think I did it every few days for about 15 minutes to a half an hour. And I just would sit down at my desk and I would track everything and enter. I would save my receipts in like this old cigarette case. I never smoked, but whatever that. It was like this cool silver cigarette case with a butterfly. And I saved all my receipts and I, you know, would stay awake at the checkout counter and I would get my receipts and I would put them in my stylish little accoutrement. And then every few days I would sit down at my desk and light my candles and nibble on my chocolate. And then I would enter in my income and expenses. And I did that every few days. There's also, you know, this weekly check-in that could be more of a half an hour. And this is where it starts getting into the other levels of the money date. So, you know, the body check-in is huge for me. So some of my money dates were just body check-ins and journaling and just trying to understand what is going on right now. What is this huge reaction? What am I scared about? What am I upset about? You know, around money right now with my husband, with my clients, with my business, when I had a business partner years ago. So, you know, there's the body check-in that can happen. There's the sitting down and tracking your numbers, whether you do it manually like I used to do it, and then eventually hand it over to my husband, and then he taught himself Mint and iBank, and then it's downloaded from the bank easily, and he just categorizes. And for him, he used to hate bookkeeping, and then he had to finally make it into a meditation. So he sits on a cushion. I don't sit on a cushion. I dance or I hike. He sits down and he needed to make his bookkeeping practice like a meditation. And that shifted everything for him, like where he just was watching his breath. And so that's what he does. The other thing that happens in money dates is when we reach out to a financial support team. And so do you need, you know, every year, a few years, we might need to add a new person to our financial support team. Do you need a new bookkeeper? You know, after 12 years of doing after 12 years of doing my own bookkeeping, I finally handed over my bookkeeping 2 years ago. To, you know, I manually did it for 12 years. I handed it over to Jess Salzman, Heart-Based Bookkeeping. Her and her husband run the business together. They give me monthly reports. And so I do my monthly review, which I always did. And the monthly review is usually a longer review, sitting down and looking at the numbers. And again, just at first learning. So maybe you do all this, but for people that are just beginning, I needed a few months to like look at old patterns and look at my old data and just be like, what am I doing? You know, what's working, what's not, without judgment, like sitting judgment to the side, give it some tea and chocolate. And so I'm saying a lot of different things. For me, it's either, right, so the bookkeeper, getting a new accountant, even making that call. Then there's like all this spiritual work around trust, tithing, thriving. You know, people use the word abundance or prosperity. I like to use thriving. I like the word trust. I work on my trust every day. Sometimes it's sitting in my money date. A lot of the times it's hiking on my mountain. That's when I'm working with trust in nature. So money dates for me happen sitting down. They used to happen every few days, weekly. They definitely happen monthly. They definitely happen monthly and quarterly with my husband, more quarterly with my husband. But this is, I would say at the beginning, money dates need to be more planned. And then they can be, once the grooves are set, then they can become way more spontaneous. Yeah. Some people really need to ritualize them with the candles and the whole spiel, and other people start with big rituals and then a few months in realize it's too much and they need to like scale down on some of that and just simply look at the numbers. But I always say, like with couples, don't look at the numbers first. Please don't. Please create a safe space where you can even come together and have story time and talk about your money story first. And then you can move into values and how you're different. And then you can move into who's on what. And then you can move into the numbers. So, I can go on and on, but hopefully I'm giving a little bit of the last thing I'll say is that there's always this yearly money date and ritual where you all do this, the visioning and the dreaming, and then mapping it out in a money map. So mapping it out, I have 3 tiers: basic needs lifestyle, comfortable lifestyle, and ultimate lifestyle. So mapping out a money map based on what phase of life you're in, what phase of your business.
Can you say those again, Bari? So
basic needs lifestyle, comfortable lifestyle. I call it ultimate lifestyle. Some people call it luxury lifestyle. Again, name it whatever you want.
Sure.
Yeah. And so that's a whole beautiful ritual money date at the end of the year. But then how you interact with that monthly is then you pick this year we're going for comfortable lifestyle. And then at the end of the month, when you review what's working, what's not, what's actually coming in, where you're spending, then you get to compare it to the intentions that you set. And, you may have to do that every 6 months because life changes and sometimes it's hard to plan out. And so that's a little bit, it can be daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. I know I'm being so simplistic.
It's beautiful. No, it's so great. And all of these things really help bring you back into that awareness that you keep talking about. And that's the place from which we can make informed, intentional choices. And that's where you actually start to see the outcomes change and the results change and moving from that basic needs towards that ultimate lifestyle.
And it's small, and sometimes big leaps happen, but usually they do. They really do. Like there was a year where I did so much hard work in launching, and then literally in a flash, things went to a whole next level. So yes.
Yeah, I relate to that too, and yet preparing ourselves that most of the time we're in a cycle through those phases. Even at new growth phases, there could be leaps. But then I think there's a lot of pressure on people too. Once you've experienced one of those big leaps, then if your next one is more like a gradual progression, there's this feeling like, it's not this grandiose, huge shift, but those little steps. It's like they talk about, the tiniest little re-navigation with the ship takes you to a really different place over the miles, entirely different horizon you're reaching. So even these little shifts in how you're interacting with money and the choices you're making and the intentionality you bring can absolutely deliver you to away from that recurring pattern and towards a new relationship to money.
It's the same thing with our bodies and food and any other challenging, addictive patterns that we have, that we want to change.
Well, you touched on, you mentioned the body scan again, which is, I'm so glad because there are those of us in this circle who are doing somatic work, so that's great. But you also touched on a passion of mine, which is tracking. And I know we're over time here, but I just wanted to give a little bit of a nod to the fact that there's a lot more options out there now in terms of managing your money and the software and the solution. So you mentioned my favorite, which is Mint. So just tell us what do you recommend in terms of tracking software? And
so this is what my community is crazy about. For personal, they love YNAB, so YNAB.com.
Okay.
Now here's the thing: it's more of a budget. It's more of a money map, so it's future. Okay. So you need your data. So a lot of people start with Mint because it's just this quick glance and it grabs up all your data and numbers really easily. Yeah. But there's so far you can go with Mint, right? So Mint is simple and it gives you your data. But YNAB is something, if you actually want to learn how to bring more awareness with the tracking tool and start planning, YNAB. So Mint, YNAB, iBank, Quicken, those are some good personal bookkeeping systems. For business, I do love QuickBooks. I'm kind of old-fashioned in that way. I just was trained on it and fell in love with it, right? So there's QuickBooks, there's Wave, there is Cashew, K-A-S-H-O-O. There's Xero, X-E-R-O, which is an international one. And those are 4 good ones. I mean, my community is now international, and so we just created an entire grid of like, nice. I mean, there's too many options, right? Sure, so this is what, I will say that there's no perfect bookkeeping system. It doesn't exist, and you won't find it. And so there's going to be some compromise. And so just get a sense of what features you do need, you do want, you may not know at all. So just go online and start like going to some of these sites. YNAB. YNAB has incredible tutorials that people love. So just like peek around online and see which one is visually satisfying, which one feels intuitive, whatever qualities and features you need the bookkeeping system to have. See if you can find one that's close to that. And again, no one's perfect, and you're not like stuck with one. You can try it out and experiment, and then in 6 months change. But I love tracking.
I do too. I do. And so you have really offered 2 great tools, more than that, but just let's focus on the body scan and tracking as 2 great ways to build your awareness around where you are with money and what your relationship is. Your body will talk to you about the emotional piece and the somatic piece, and the software will talk to you about the literal and the practical, which is great. You shared really great tips and ideas for the practices piece, whether we call that ritual or ceremony or practice. You brought in sacred space, you brought in chocolate, tea, all these things, these ideas of bringing in what speaks to you in terms of what feels good, and then the emotional piece, the trust piece. So I hope people will really feel encouraged to do what you can to come into contact with either nature or your body or sisterhood or community or a program like Bari, so that you can build that trust muscle and begin to make those different choices from a place of loving, unconditional awareness. So, Bari, is there any last thing that you want to share with us? Any last one favorite tip, or do you feel complete?
Oh my! So many were shared. I think I would just encourage again the body check-in and the money dates, because in the money date there's the layers, and it will lead to the tracking, but there may be a few layers or baby steps before that, before you're ready to go peeking onto tracking systems. But so just start crafting some money dates. Awesome. Once a week, and bring the body check-in. Just start to just invite it in. Say, please come with me. Please let me remember to do you as I'm about to have money conversations, as I'm, every day there's so many money interactions to be learning from and understanding. So bringing in the body check-in to your daily life, just that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you for weathering our little tech storm here and migrating and being nimble and resourceful and graceful. And I want to encourage everyone to go find Bari online. We can find you, I know, at your website, baritessler.com. We also can find you on Facebook, I know. Is that the best social media platform to find you on? Where do you like to hang out?
My favorite is my personal Facebook page. That's just about to hit 5,000, but I just opened up the follower thing. Anyway, that's interesting, but that's where I'm at daily. It's just, I love it. I like Instagram and Pinterest, but I'm on Facebook, my personal page. I do have a business page too, but I'm still trying to figure out, what is this animal? But so my personal Facebook page. Yeah.
Wonderful. I encourage everyone to do so, to follow you. I know I so enjoy being connected and getting little glimpses onto your walks on the mountain. And so it was just a real honor to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Keep us posted on your book, too.
I will. It's coming out spring 2016.
Yeah, okay. All right. So much love.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming, everyone. Take care. Bye.